Hola, mis amigos. Today we're going to read about my favorite artist named Henri Matisse. And Matisse's nickname is the King of Color. So his artwork is full of color and bright and bold. Monique climbed the steep hill and up some long steps to a huge building high above the town. The sign by the door said, Henri Matisse. It was like stepping into a multicolored jungle. Birds flew from room to room, and plants grew as tall as trees. Hello, called a small voice. Is that the night nurse? Hello, Mr. Matisse, said Monique. I've come to look after you. The old artist had a silver beard and twinkly glasses. He was recovering from a big operation. The doctors thought he would never paint again. I feel a little better, he said, but I'd like you to read to me. So, would you like to live in a jungle house like that? I would. I like all the paintings, the colors, the plants and animals. So Monique chose a book. She read for a long, long time. Matisse didn't sleep, but Monique fell asleep. Oh, I'm sorry, she said. This is my very first job. Matisse just smiled. Look, I made a drawing of you. Then Matisse told her about his adventures in different lands, diving in tropical lagoons, rowing on blue-green seas, and soon Monique forgot it was night outside. So Matisse drew a little picture of her while she was sleeping on the book. Matisse loved music. Matisse loved flowers. Matisse loved kids, too. He tied chalk to a long stick so he could draw his grandkids up on the ceiling. They keep me company when I can't sleep at night, he said. Have you ever attached chalk to a long stick like that to draw way up high? But the thing Matisse loved most of all was color. He was always trying to find ways to make his paintings brighter and brighter, and some people called him a wild beast because his colors were so crazy. Every evening, Monique climbed the hill to the jungle studio, and Monique helped Matisse sit up and paint, and they became really good friends. Matisse made lots of pictures of Monique, too, in a beautiful silk dress, with a mandolin on a chair, a musical instrument. And all his work was full of joy. There's enough sadness in the world, he would say. So he would only paint happy and bright things. And these are real artworks he's done. Look how much better I am, said Matisse one day. It's like having a new life. Thanks for looking after me, Monique. You've been like a grandfather to me, said Monique. Then Monique picked up her bag and walked slowly out of the jungle room. She thought she would never see Matisse again. Well, Monique went to school far away in the mountains, but it was not an ordinary school. Everybody dressed in black and white. There were no colors at all. Monique's school was a school for nuns. Life was very hard, and the nuns were so poor they didn't even have a proper chapel. They had to say their prayers in a cold and leaky garage. When the old nuns heard that Monique had been a nurse, they gave her a bicycle and sent her to look after people who weren't well. Every day Monique cycled along the lane past a big empty house. The house had views right across the mountains to the sea. It was called the Dream House. One afternoon in June, Monique saw that a new owner was moving into the dream house. The new owner loved birds. The new owner loved cats. The new owner was Henri Matisse. Matisse was delighted to see Monique again. Hey, you're all in black and white, he teased, but I've found a way to be even more colorful than ever. Look, I'll show you. First, I put on some music. Jazz is best. Now I shall paint some big sheets of paper as bright as I can. Then, with hands as quick as butterflies, Matisse cut 100 dancing shapes, and soon they were pinned up on every wall of the dream house. So he would paint paper, then he would cut out funky shapes, and glue them all together. I've been painting too, said Monique shyly. She showed Matisse a tiny picture. It was a design for a stained glass window. We could have made this with real stained glass as high as this room, said Matisse, but Monique laughed. The nuns don't even have a chapel. You can't put stained glass windows in a leaky garage. It was nearly dark when Monique ran home. The nuns would be worried. And look, Monique was covered in splashes of color from the paint. Come back soon, laughed Matisse. Late into the night, the lights burned at the dream house. Matisse was working on an idea. The next time Monique called, she found Matisse very excited. Monique, you've been so kind to me. This is my idea. I'm going to build a chapel up here in the mountains, not a dark, gloomy church. My chapel is going to be a house of color. It'll be my present for you. Matisse asked Monique to build a model, like a big dollhouse. Now all I have to do is fill your box with my imagination. So a 3D model, a small miniature one first before you make the big real one. Matisse made wonderful drawings for the chapel walls. He even designed some colorful robes for the priest to wear. We don't want a chapel built by a wild beast, grumbled the old nuns. The chapel took a long time. Matisse became tired. He asked the carpenter to put wheels on a bed and a tray for his paints. Matisse called it his taxi bed. He could roll back and forth. At last the workmen began to put up the chapel walls. Their bangs and shouts echoed through the mountains. The chapel had a bright blue roof and a golden bell on a curly tower. This'll be more like a circus than a chapel, said the old nuns. They weren't very impressed. One gray day, when everything was nearly finished, Monique pushed Matisse along the lane to look inside. Monique was surprised. Everything seemed to be shiny white. It didn't look like a house of color at all. Perhaps the nuns had won. The chapel was black and white, just like their clothes. But the King of Color had one more trick to play. He'd been working away in his studio designing windows for the chapel, using colored paper to cut out blue and green shapes of colored light. Those are some pretty big scissors. 17 stained glass windows were made in a factory exactly as Matisse had planned. A big truck climbed slowly up the mountain, and the workmen lifted them carefully into place, and then they drove back down the mountain, and the chapel was finished. Monique got up early. It was her turn to wake the others, and today was a very special day. It was the opening of the Matisse chapel. There'd be lots of visitors, and Monique wanted everything to be ready. She crept outside. The chapel was dark and quiet. Then, something amazing happened. The morning sun rose over the mountains, and a bright ray of sunlight fell across the dark windows. Very slowly, the room began to fill with colored light. It crept across the floor and onto the white walls. Then, just like a magic painting, the black and white world filled with beautiful colors. So the illustrator of the book cut out an illustration of Monique and put it on a real photograph of the Matisse Chapel. So this is a true story. He really did design it and get those stained glass windows. So even though the room was black and white, the light came through the colored windows and it danced the color and light all around. Monique felt as if she was floating in a multicolored sea. Matisse was painting with light. Monique stood still for a moment, then she went to wake the others. High on the blue roof, the golden bell began to chime, and it echoed across the mountains to the sea. And as the sunlight filled his bedroom, Matisse heard the sound, and he smiled. Now I can rest, said the King of Color. So now Matisse can finally take a nap. His work is done, and his cat can take a snooze too. So I hope you enjoyed the story of Henri Matisse. This was a true story of the King of Color.